Welcome sa Nagmamahusay with Leia Rasay, a podcast journeying through the stories of Filipino creative workers. This is powered by Husay Solutions OPC, providing career management for artists and creative solutions for brands.
I think Philippines will be in a much better position to be proud of its creative scene. So challenge yun sa lahat na mag-ambag towards that goal. I really have high hopes for the Philippine creative scene, pero napakalaking task siya ahead and we really need everyone's help. I hope mangyari siya.
In this lifetime.
In this lifetime, I hope. Umuusad naman siya, pero parang maikli lang ang life. Sana bumilis ang usad niya.
Ang kasama natin ay isang artist, designer, isang educator, activist din siya, and collaborator, si Karl Castro. So, hi, Karl!
Hello po. Hello, Miss Leia. Hello to Nagmamahusay, the crowd of Nagmamahusay.
Yes. So, pakilala mo naman ng maayos ang sarili mo.
Ayan. Hello po. Ako po si Karl Castro. Isa po akong artist, designer, and educator and activist, as you mentioned. I work with many different media, including painting, weaving, film, and installation. I also see exhibition making itself as a medium. Sa design naman, naging focus ko ay editorial and publishing. Sa teaching naman, I teach at the Ateneo de Manila University, Department of Fine Arts. In my activism ngayon, my focus is really more on cultural work. I volunteer for various organizations na may advocacy for indigenous peoples and cultural work. Currently, I'm a board member of Concerned Artists of the Philippines, which is an artist organization na nabuo ng martial law. Ang main na pinaglalaban namin ay freedom of expression, human rights for everyone, and artists' welfare also.
Saan ba nagsimula yung interest mo sa art or nung nagkamuwang ka na ba about dito?
Bata pala ako, mahilig na talaga ako sa art. I grew up in Angono, which is known for its very vibrant art scene. We have two national artists, Botong Francisco for visual arts and Lucio San Pedro for music. And my mother worked in an advertising agency. So ako, lumaki ako sa ganong atmosphere na sa office ako nanay ko lagi after school. And even though she worked in the finance side of the agency, she was very close to the creatives. And I think nag-extend din yun sa akin kasi since she knew na merong puwang sa industriya for creative work, she was very supportive of my own artistic pursuits. Nung bata daw ako, ang dami-dami nilang laruan na binibigay sa akin like mga soldiers, mga sasakyan, mga trains, mga ganun. Pero ang pinakahilig ko raw na laruan ay mga libro. So marami kami encyclopedia sa bahay na iba't ibang klase and I would always read through them. Tingnan ko yung mga mapa, yung mga artwork, yung mga drawings. Love ko yung mga special execution sa loob ng encyclopedia, yung mga meron siyang portfolios on plants, na mga colored illustrations, or yung sa human body na parang multi-layered yung illustrations, mga ganun. So gusto ko talaga yun. My grandmother naman was a subscriber to National Geographic magazine. So I would devour all of those magazines kahit na hindi siya pang batang content. Binabasa ko yun nung bata ako. And yung pinaka-paborito ko raw talagang laruan, my mother gifted me a whole set of flags of the world, sin tabletop set. Kasi mahilig talaga ako sa flags and sa geography, sa capitals ng mga bansa and history nila, yung cultures nila. So I guess doon sa mga bagay na yun, I could see yung initial interest ko talaga sa design and history and context and art also.
Paano ka sinuportahan ng family mo?
I thought na parang my mom was just like a regular mom. Alam mo na yun, pag magulang ka, supportan mo yung anak mo. Pero as I was growing up, sa high school and college, pag nagkukwentuhan kami ng mga klase ko at ng mga kaibigan ko, na-realize ko na napakaswerte ko pala kasi nga supportive pala sila. Kasi meron palang parents na hindi supportive, whether by choice or by their conditions or situation. Maraming mga kaklase ko yung dinissuade na mag-take up ng fine arts or some music or mga other creative courses. They were told na, mag-business, mag-doktor, mag-law, mga ganong kurso, the usual. Nung bata ako, I was given yung mga art materials pag kailangan ko, mga papel, sandamakmak na papel, mga art books for different things like origami, calligraphy, ganyan. I mean, maghahanap talaga ako, tapos bibili naman siya ng nanay ko pag grudgingly minsan kasi mahal. Pero yun, so I knew that my mom was supportive but I didn't know that it was a rare thing. Nung bata rin ako, tuwing summer, my siblings and I would go to different mga summer workshops and my siblings would always do a varied set, like may swimming, may speech, may piano, mga ganyan. Habang ako, laging visual arts yung gusto kong kinukuha. I didn't have those skills growing up, yung hindi ako marunong lumangoy, medyo matanda na ako, natuto ako lumangoy. Hindi pa rin ako masyadong magaling magsalita. Pero marunong ako mag-drawing at the time. I think natutuwa rin yung teachers ko kasi parang I was very, I guess, intrepid as a kid na parang I would really try to do things na hindi beyond my age level. Lagi ako yung pinakabata doon sa class or something like that. Tapos maayos yung output ko. Tapos, I also got exposed to computers very early. Kasi nga sa agency, nagtrabaho yung nanay ko. So, computers were early access to gadgets like cellphones and computers. So, MS-DOS pa lang, may access na ako sa computer, WordStar, ganyan, yung mga earliest forms of desktop publishing. So, nagkaroon din talaga ako ng insight on how desktop publishing developed. Parang pinaglalaroan ko yung Adobe 4.0, Corel, Freehand, mga ganong kaluma. Pinaglalaroan ko lang siya. Magde-design ako ng mga greeting cards for my classmates, mga Mother's Day card for my mother, mga ganyan. Ginagawa ko ng calling card yung mga kaklase ko, kahit na hello, kami lang naman yung bibigay. So yun, mahilig talaga ako sa design nun. I realized na napaka-privileged ko having access to all of those things, but also having a family that was supportive na hindi ako hinahadlangan or pinipigilang gawin yung mga bagay.
Yeah. So, naalala mo ba, like at what age mo siya napansin yung privilege mo comparing with other kids?
Maaga yung privilege. Kinder pa lang, nasa Lasal Green Hills na ako. So, of course, privilege. May vague awareness naman ako na hindi naman lahat ng bata ay hinahatid ng kotse to school at nag-aaral sa private school. Pero to be fair sa Lasallian education ko, meron naman talaga silang values of, St. John Baptist de La Salle was known for being kind to the poor, kaya nga nagkaroon ng Lasallian education. Nagturo siya sa mga mahihirap. So, meron din efforts yung Lasallian brothers in that regard. So, I remember nung bata ako, I think it was around grade 2, nagkaroon kami ng immersion sa isang parang urban poor community, I think within QC or something. Tapos, kaming mga bata, parang ang assignment lang sa amin, i-assign kami isa-isa to a host family for an afternoon, and ang task namin ay dalan sila ng food to share for the whole family. So, yung nanay ko, nagdala siya ng parang Bake Mac, kompleto yung nanay ko, as in, paper plates, utensils, cups, as in, kompleto. Ganyan yung nanay ko. So, ako naman, okay, sige, dalhin doon. So, meet ko sila. Siyempre, una ko napansin yung their house was a shanty. Siyempre, alam ko hindi ganun yung bahay namin. At mainly, the activity was to share a meal and talk with them, get to know each other. Pero yung hindi ko makalimutan, after namin kumain, disposable plate, plastic spoon and fork. So ako naman, parang nilinis ko yung plate ko and then tinapo ko siya sa basurahan. Tapos sabi nung nanay, parang, ay, pwede pa yung gamitin. So pinunasan niya at hinugasan niya, nilinis na yung paper plate and yung spoon and fork. Tapos, yun, gagamitin nila ulit. So ako parang na-realize ko na, parang something designed to be disposable. For some people, they will really try to maximize the use of it. And doon ko talaga na-realize na meron talagang very wide gap between the rich and the poor. So, that was on the poor side, kumbaga. Sa rich side naman, alam ko rin na parang, even though nag-aaral ako sa Lasal, syempre pag bibisita ako sa mga bahay ng mga kaklase ko, alam ko rin na mayaman sila at ako hindi mayaman. Kumbaga, ako nakatira ako sa Rizal, so regular suburban house lang sa amin. Although even that, I know it's a privilege. Pero yung mga kaklase ko, may mga swimming pool yung bahay, multiple cars, parang aircon yung buong bahay, may jacuzzi, yung mga ganon, may mga huge TVs and the latest gadgets. So, alam ko rin na privileged ako, pero merong mga mas privileged pa. So, in LaSalle, I was exposed to that very wide spectrum. And so, early on, I had that kind of idea of what privilege is.
Fast forward, paano mo siya, masasabi mo ba na ito yung, most likely, isa ito sa influence nung mga ginagawa mo na ngayon.
Malaking influence.
In terms of social justice,
Yeah.
yung activism. Pwede ba ikwento, ano pa yung mga
Naging experience
Oo,
ko.
parang siguro tipping point na, sige, ito na yung dapat kong gawin siguro as an artist.
Marami. I guess parang gradual siya. Siguro the simplest answer is parang unti-unting lumalaki yung mundo ko. Kasi syempre nung nasa Lasal ako, school bahay, libro, subdivision in Rizal, hindi ako masyadong lumalabas ng bahay kasi nga sheltered ako. Ganun. So, unti-unting lumalaki yung mundo ko. So, nung high school, I studied in a public school, so medyo naghirap na kami nun economically. So I studied in a public school, Philippine High School for the Arts. Para siyang Pisay, pero for arts. At isa lang ang campus namin. Yun, so that was also a game changer for me kasi coming from LaSalle na exclusive school, tas alam mo, of a certain middle class to upper class composition or demographic, yung makiling was much broader kasi national yung scope niya. I had classmates from different regions who spoke different languages, who came from different economic backgrounds. In a way, parang kami pa yung naging minority na yung mga Englishero, yung mga nag-aral sa Maynila. Kami pa yung naging minority. When I thought that was, normal, hindi pala. Iba-iba rin yung religion, so that was a big thing. Kasi parang, I always assumed na, we're always told na Philippines is a predominantly Catholic country, pero ang dami palang hindi. Yun, lumaki yung mundo ko noon. And then, nung nag-college na ako, lumaki pa lalo kasi parang when I studied in UP Diliman, which is 20,000 students and hundreds of courses, mas iba-iba pang tao. At hindi lang estudyante, pati mga tao sa komunidad. Lumawak pa yung mundo ko. I guess one big tipping point for me was nung sumali ako sa Philippine Collegian, which is the official school paper ng UP. And it's known for its radical position historically. First year, sumali na ako nung collegian. Bagong-bago. First sem, first year. Nag-apply ako as layout artist because that's what I knew how to do. Yun, at sa collegian, kakaiba siya sa ibang school papers kasi two things siguro, weekly yung labas niya at that time. So imagine having to publish a weekly student paper. Napakalaking disiplina yung kailangan gawin. Napakalaking commitment din niya. So, doon siguro ako nahasa na kailangan mabilis ka mag-layout, kailangan systematic ka, kailangan may certain standard of work ka na pag hindi pwedeng pangit. Alam mo yun, kasi parang makikita yun ng buong sangkayupihan. Nakakayap sa pangalan mo pa. And then, we also had quite meager na means kasi yung afford pa lang namin nun was at the most 1 to 2 color na printing. So, I had to really design with that in mind, na newsprint, na it will bleed, na ano yung makita mo sa monitor, minsan pangit siya sa papel, so you have to adjust your design na kahit pumangat siya ng kaunti, maganda pa rin siya. But aside from the, parang kumbaga, the design part of it and the discipline part of it, yung exposure ko to different issues, different people. Kasi nga, we covered not just local issues na school issues, but also Metro Manila-wide or national issues. So doon ako na-expose sa I met peasants and farmers for the first time. I met indigenous people for the first time, mga workers in factories. Doon ako bumisita sa mga strike, doon ako bumisita sa mga urban poor communities, sa mga bukid. Nakita ko talaga na ang dami talagang nangyayari na hindi nakikita ng mga tao. Kasi yung Collegian was also special kasi hindi siya mainstream publication, therefore hindi kami beholden to advertisers. Wala kaming kailangan iwasan na banggitin na brands kung merong strikes in their factories. So we had that commitment na ipakita talaga yung alternative na media, meaning community-based siya, meaning point of view siya, hindi na mga politiko or na mga major groups, kundi na mga marginalized groups na hindi nabibigyan ng boses. So I think doon talaga nagbago yung pananaw ko sa ano ba yung dapat kong gawin sa world. Kasi once you see those issues, hindi ka na mabubuhay ng as if hindi mo yun nalaman. Pag nakita mo yung mga magsasaka na hirap silang i-maintain yung harvest nila. Hindi mo na pwedeng bigyan ng credibility yung sabing tamad yung mga magsasaka kasi parang hello, their feet already physically adjust to the bukid because they're so hardworking. Mga ganon. So, yun. So, nagkaroon talaga ako ng understanding na merong disconnect between what is broadcast, what is documented, what is shown in the media, what is talked about in middle-class circles, between what's really happening out in the countryside.
Kaya yung nagkukwento ka kasi, siguro, ano na rin, dahil ako bata pa lang naman yung anak ko. I have a 4-year-old. So, ang dami mong iniisip about the future. Curious ako kung paano, ano yung freedom at up to what extent kahinayaan ng parents mo para, di ba, mag-explore, ganyan.
Honestly, very sheltered, as in, sheltered talaga ako. As in, sobrang nakakatawa, pero isa sa mga feeling ko big achievements ko nung high school ay nag-commute ako mula Angono hanggang Mega Mall. Na isang sakay lang naman na FX. Pero kasi hindi ako pinapayagan ganun. Kasi ako yung bunso, only boy. So parang, lagi silang, ingat ka, huwag lalabas, dangerous. Nung nag-apply ako sa UP, as in literally, hinatid ako ng nanay ko sa UP para hindi ako mawala. Tapos, ang bili niya sa akin ay, huwag kang magpa-frat at huwag kang mag-arali. Sorry, mom. 1 out of 2.
Sorry.
Oo.
Kumina yung audio.
Oo. Yun. So, talaga, parang shelter din talaga ako. Kahit nung nasa collegial na ako, lagi ako sinasabihan ng family ko na, tigil mo na yan, mag-ingat ka kasi parang paka-dangerous na ginagawa mo. Lalo na, parang nung naging editor-in-chief ako ng collegial when I was in 3rd year. Tapos yung issues namin noon, that was GMA era. Issues namin noon yung may mga dinudukot na estudyante. Hanggang ngayon, nawawala sila. For me, actually, parang for most people, yung EJK ay kay Duterte nila ina-associate. Pero ako, kay GMA ko siya ina-associate. Dahil doon ko unang narinig yung term regularly. Dahil nung panahon ni Jovito Palparan, he was a commander sa mga areas na maraming pinapatay na aktivista. Ang dami-daming extrajudicial killings. And napakalapit sa UP nung mga nangyayari kasi mga estudyante dito yung nawawala. So, lagi akong pinagsasabihan na parang mag-ingat ka, hindi mo alam kung sino yung mga bangga mo or ano mangyayari sa'yo. Tapos may reports talaga ng may mga intelligence officer sa campus, may mga white na van, mga ganyan. So, it really was dangerous. Pero sa akin talaga, alam ko na kung hindi ko yung gagawin, sinong gagawa? I mean, we have to do our part. And a lot of it, I must admit, I kept from them because I knew that either they would not understand or even if they did understand, hindi nila talaga ako papayagan. So, ang isa ko rin natutunan na important na bagay from activism, I guess which helps me a lot even today, merong idea na nauuna yung kapasyahan bago yung kahandaan. Ibig sabihin, kahit hindi ka pa handa, kung nag-decide ka na yun yung tutunguin mong ay tatahakin mo landas, gagawin mo na siya, kahit hindi ka pa handa. Kasi parang from a middle class standpoint, lagi nating iniisip na gagawin lang natin pag ready na ako, di ba? When the situation is ripe, di ba? When I have everything I need to succeed, which never happens really. So, kailangan mo unang magpasya muna. Yun, so sa akin yun, parang even if sometimes it would go against my family's wishes, naintindihan ko naman yung pinanggagalingan nila. Pero kailangan din nila maintindihan yung panggagalingan ko. On my part naman, binalansi ko naman yung, I think I did well naman sa student, hindi ko naman pinabayaan yung pag-aaral ko. So yun, I really tried to balance their expectations of me and my own desires. And to think na, ako nga parang, I think na my choices were actually quite moderate. Kasi I knew there were batchmates na hindi na nagtuloy sa pag-aaral, nag-full-time activist na sila early on, mga ganon. So, yun. Pero, these were my choices. Ayun. Mahirap din talaga.
So, sa ano pa lang to, no? Sa school pa lang, ang dami mo ng matatapang na ginagawa.
Yeah. I think yun yung, I guess, I can't imagine kung hindi ako nag-UP. Kasi I actually got into other schools, na private schools. And I can't imagine who I would be kung hindi ako nag-UP talaga. I would probably be a very different person. Na-appreciate ko, especially nung gumraduate na ako, nakita ko na yung world outside of UP, and nakita ko rin yung world, I got a peek into the world sa iba't ibang universities. Iba rin talaga yung UP, iba yung commitment to academic freedom, iba yung terrain sa campus, I guess, iba yung sense of duty na inculcate niya sa students. Na, of course, there will always be clashes, especially within the ranks, within the students' ranks, with the administration. Pero, kumbaga, hindi dinidiscount yung halaga nung na kailangan ipaglaban ng mga tao yung pinaniniwalaan.
Yeah. Ano yung naging work mo after?
Yung first job ko, na official job, naging graphic designer ako ng isang gallery sa Makati. But before that, actually, in my last few semesters, nag-freelance graphic designer na ako. In that sense, actually, yung collegian, yung mga ginagawa ko sa UP, really helped kasi, kunyari, sa publication design, naging super kabisado ko na yung InDesign. Therefore, I was equipped to take on publication design jobs, even if I was still a student. Yun. So, I was doing freelance work on book design, editorial design, posters. So, I guess working student ako in a way, although may allowance pa rin naman ako na maliit from my parents. My first job was, I decided to take a graphic design job kasi nagkaroon ako ng dilemma nun na syempre film yung tinapos ko na kurso. So, naturally, syempre, you would think na dapat magtrabaho ko sa pelikula. Pero, at that time, digital was still an emerging technology. Yung options ko to work in the industry were not really to my liking. Parang it was really to really make money. It was either you worked in network TV or in advertising, both of which I didn't want to do. Kasi the type of films I want to make, I really wanted a lot of creative freedom nga to do. And I knew na hindi yun magpa-prosper in both directions. And I knew from my work in activism na kung ano yung pinipili mong landas, it also helps shape you and your worldview. Kunyari, kung mag-advertising ako, I cannot help but see things from an advertising point of view in terms of campaign, in terms of the galaw na advertising. Ganun din sa mainstream, parang ganun. So I knew rin na pag pinili ko yun, makakahubog yun sa akin. So I decided to, kumbaga, regulate yung exposure ko to that kind of industry. So I decided na yung graphic design yung pinaka-naturally commercial ko na skill that I also like to do. Kumbaga, yun yung kaya kong pangatawanan na hindi soul-sucking and I can navigate better. So I chose graphic design, and then yung first job ko nga sa gallery, na-enjoy ko naman yun kasi syempre ito sa gallery, so art-related pa rin siya. I was exposed to art, which was important to me. I learned more about the art market, the art world. But on the side, I would still do book design work, mga publication jobs, mga random racket. I guess naging important sa akin na may time ako to do the things I really wanted to do. Kumbaga, I knew that I needed to invest time and effort sa mga bagay na alam ko mahalaga, na hindi necessarily yung trabaho ko. I still had time to volunteer for advocacy groups that I believed in, or participate in campaigns, and to do book design for scholarly work, independent publications also. I tried to balance that all for many years. Kaya haggard din ako. Kasi parang more and more na-realize ko lahat ng mga bagay na gusto kong gawin, either wala masyadong pera or mahirap maging stable yung mga bagay. In a way, they're still all my advocacies as much as possible. So hanggang ngayon actually, medyo ganun pa rin yung, kumbaga, sobrang choosy ko sa mga trabahong papasukin ko. And in a way, I guess that's also a bit of a privilege. Pero alam ko rin na may impact din yun sa buhay ko. Na sobrang mapili ako sa companies na, parang halos hindi ako nag-full-time ever sa company. Kasi parang, iniisip ko talaga parang, ibibigay ko ba talaga sa kumpanyang to yung full commitment ko na 5 days a week, ito yung iniisip ko at sinusunod ko yung gusto nila. I hadn't found a company that I would say yes to ng ganong level of it. But syempre, ibig sabihin din nun, hindi naging smooth yung aking financial situation, career, medyo hit and miss ang aking income. Alam naman natin pag freelance, hindi mo alam kung kailan darating yung pera. Trabaho ka lang ng trabaho and somehow you hope na darating yung pera. Minsan marami kang pera kasi sabay-sabay sila magbabayad. Minsan walang nagbabayad, so tipid-tipid forever. Until now, actually, parang I think many people think that for someone of my stature in the industry and the years of experience and the accolades I've got, parang I think many people will think na sobrang yaman ko na, pero the opposite is true. Hindi po ako mayaman. Pero naging mayaman naman ako in other ways, in sa experience at karanasan. So yun yung iniisip ko. Parang when I think of jobs, I try to balance yung kaya kong gawin at tingin kong may matututunan ako sa yung may magagawa pa rin akong mga bagay na hindi ba siya sasagka sa mga gusto ko talagang gawin din na iba pang bagay.
Ngayon nagkakwento ka ng mga experiences, pwede mo ba i-cite ano yung example ng actual work mo? Like whether it's an installation or film or book?
Okay. Siguro yung current favorite ko ngayon ay syempre itong nakikita natin ngayon, yung You Find. It's called Urban Forestry Institute Diliman. So it's an outdoor installation. It's my biggest outdoor installation to date. Siguro for context, high school pa lang, art high school kasi ako. And napaka-interesting na sa akin yung idea nung installation kasi it really activates whole space. Installation art kasi is not really tied to, unlike kunyari painting, alam mong painting siya. It's paint on a surface. Pag installation, the possibilities are much more varied. It could be light, it could be sound, it could be sculpture, it could be an experience, it could be any, as long as you're working with the space. So that's what's most exciting for me. Nung high school, naisip ko na yun na parang dati ang akala ko yung art, drawing, ganyan, painting. Pero when we were studying different art techniques like printmaking, sculpture, collage, etc., narealize ko na I loved all these media and I didn't want to be tied to just one. Parang gusto ko na pwede ko silang gawin lahat. At alam ko rin na I really wanted to find the right form or medium for the concept or topic that I was going to choose to pursue. So in a way, you can say na mas conceptual yung nature ng practice ko. Pero at the same time, ang hirap din ng installation kasi you need a space and it's not very commercial. Like, how many collectors do you know na I collect installation art, may installation ako sa bahay. Hindi ganun eh. Parang hindi siya ganun. So, challenging din siya. And dahil nga rin sa worldview ko, mas interesting sa akin yung mga art forms na mahirap i-commercialize. So even though, of course, in the mainstream art world, anything can be sold, even concepts, even conceptual art, even installations, they can be bought, of course. But as something that you want to practice regularly, dun ako na intriga sa possibilities ng installation. So this one is very special to me kasi I can say it took a long time for a work like this to be produced for me. I mean, it took us less than a year to produce it, literally. Pero the work kasi activates a space here in UP Diliman. And sa pananaw ko, nakabase yun sa matagal ko ng research and lived experience about UP Diliman and UP. It has been many years already. Kumbaga, hindi ko yung magagawa kung hindi ko alam yung alam ko about the university and its role in society and the space also. One of my main collaborators, si Eldri Infante, was someone who I worked with in a different endeavor. So, pareho kaming co-administrators ng Brutalist Pilipinas, which is a social media Instagram account on brutalist architecture in the Philippines. Ilang taon na rin kaming magka-collaborate for that account. And this is our first, I guess, parang built project na, as in, it's a building. So I'm very happy na nabuo to. Tapos, I think na-invite din ako kasi parang this work is part of a larger outdoor exhibition organized by the Office of Initiatives in Culture and the Arts ng UP Diliman, which is the office that kind of organizes art and cultural projects on campus. So they conceptualized it as part of the annual UP Diliman Arts Festival. I was part of 3 artists who were invited to create outdoor installations within the academic oval. Alam ko rin na I wouldn't have gotten that opportunity if I had not been constantly trying to push the type of work that I've been doing. So I'm very happy that this is here. So aside from the fact na it took so much to get to this point na kaya ko siyang gawin technically and with the social capital and logistics, happy rin ako I already view the installation as a success kasi the installation really tries to engage kung ano ba dapat yung learning, like saan ba siya nagaganap, ano ba yung university, and also ano rin ba yung public space, ano ba yung overlap ng dalawang areas na yun na academic freedom and public space as a right. In today's world kasi, both spheres are narrowing down very sharply. Makikita natin yun sa, di ba, in Trump era America, students who are demonstrating against Palestine are being deported even if they're American citizens. Kumbaga, no one is really safe. Even yung mga hindi leaders ng protests are being deported, which really goes against their rights, and the government can do something that blatant. Dito naman sa Pilipinas, may mga libraries who are pulling out books that they think are subversive. And that's so stupid kasi in a university which has academic freedom, you should be able to examine any idea, even in totally abhorrent ones. You should be able to read about it and examine it. Wala dapat room for censorship in a university. Lumiliit yung academic freedom and academic space. At the same time, public space, just ko in Metro Manila, alam naman natin yun, di ba? Nasaan ba ang espasyo para sa public? Ni wala tayong sidewalk, ni wala tayong maayos na public transportation, wala tayong green spaces, wala nga tayong housing. Alam mo yun, parang it's so hard to just exist and live basic requirements of a dignified life. Wala talaga. Yung cultural spaces natin, ano ba siya, parang mga basketball court or mga mall. That's it. Even yung mga freedom parks, kailangan po magpaalam sa local government para gamitin, which defeats the purpose. So para sa akin, if there's something I learned from studying at UP, it's that yung democratic space and democratic rights are always shrinking and being taken away from us. At kung hindi mo siya ipaglalaban, mawawala talaga siya. Hindi ka pwedeng maging complacent na, nangyari na to, napanalo na to, kasi hindi yan magiging permanent. Good example yung constitution natin ngayon. Kasi if you look at the text, the 1987 constitution is very progressive, but there will always be loopholes na susubukang i-exploit. Yung spirit of the laws na originally passed will be watered down because of these interests. Kailangan mo talaga ipaglaban pa rin yung mga bagay. So, nakikita ko na this installation kind of embodies that search for dignity in public spaces, but also a democratic approach to education. So I'm very happy with it. It's also kind of a social experiment kasi when you think of art, hindi mo naisip na pwede mo siyang tulugan or upuan, di ba? Or tambayan. Pero yun yung concept niya essentially. And because it is in the public realm, hindi ko rin alam how people will use it. And I've been learning so much about how people will use it. So, yeah, I'm very happy with it.
Yes, tama. Tsaka, well, di ba, iba naman ang definition ng, very subjective kasi ang definition ng art, di ba? Pero, dun sa kwento mo, the more na hindi mo siya iniisip, ibig sabihin may nag-isip para makarating ka doon. So, ang ganda. Pero, ang tanong ka rin, kasi like, as husay kasi, di ba, we work with, like, yun nga, pagkita ng pagiging artist, paano magiging sustainable ang artistic work, ganyan. So, hindi naman kailangan yaman-yaman agad, di ba? Parang di ba, depende pa rin yan, ano yung income goal mo for the month, ganyan, ano yung mga kailangan bayaran, ganyan. Pero, yun sa'yo, how did you make it work? At least, siguro yung mga projects mo na you think are successful or yung gusto mo pa in the future. Paano mo nila-navigate yun in terms of yung logistics, yung pag-materialize ng vision, ganyan. And nabanggit mo rin off the record na paano to ma-replicate, di ba? Paglabas ng, ng campus, ganyan.
When I think about my career, hindi ako nag-expect na yayaman ako ng bonggang-bongga. Kasi that entails, parang only certain jobs can offer me that kind of financial wealth. Parang I can't imagine doing those kinds of jobs for now. Or I can't imagine those kinds of workplaces being interested in me and my ideas. I mean, we don't know. Baka naman. Pero lagi, when I try to navigate, ang goal ko lang talaga ay maging okay. Hindi maging mayaman. Basta nababayaran ko yung bills, basta hindi ako baon sa utang, na nagagawa ko yung mga kailangan kong gawin, yun lang naman yung goal ko talaga. Hindi ako nag-a-aspire ng magkamal ng maraming lupain at ari-arian. And I think major consideration, kasi for some people, hindi yun yung consideration nila. Many people aspire for more. I don't aspire for more. But what I aspire for is to be able to do the things I want to do. Therefore, when I try to, because I'm doing many things at the same time, tinatry kong balansehin yung para sa survival ko, para sa pera, para sa stability, or parang pag-iipon siya para sa projects na palabas yung pera. At yung mga projects na, kumbaga, hindi lang necessarily pera, pero pati yung pagod mo, energy mo, parang intelligence mo, talent mo, bubuhos mo rin doon. So when I look for projects, I know that I need financial anchors na may mga projects ako na i-classify ko talaga na primarily pera yung habol ko. So going into the project, pag malinaw sa akin na pera yung habol ko, I'm willing to let go of certain creative decisions, creative control, etc. Kasi yun, alam kong yun yung habol ko. And I think it's very important to nuance yung objectives mo going into a project. So, minsan, pera lang. So, malinaw sa akin yun. Minsan naman, I go into a project na might not pay so much, but I really want to work with certain people in the team. So, yun. So, sa akin, habol ko yun kasi I want to work with them. I want to gain experience in this type of field or in this type of project. So, kumbaga, I'm not just building financial wealth, but also skills, knowledge, experience, yun. Sa akin, investment din yun. In the way that I need financial investment, I also need skills investment or social capital even kasi parang, kumbaga, capital doesn't exist just in financial form. So, social capital means, expanding your networks, having a good reputation, honing more skills, being able to do more. Sometimes, in certain projects, malinaw sa akin na yun yung primary, secondary yung pera. So, I also act that way. Meron din mga projects na alam kong walang pera talaga, pero alam kong yung values ko or yung mga paninindigan ko, yun yung nasa sa buhay ko. I always give this advice to people who are trying to figure out their careers. I always tell them na you also have to treat yourself as a client. A part of your practice should be something that you are initiating. Hindi pwedeng sunod-sunuran ka lang sa kliyente the whole time kasi mawawala ka. Kailangan merong part ng practice mo na ikaw yung lead. Siguro, ikaw yung nag-i-invest, I guess, as a client. Pero, kailangan yung mga gusto mong gawin, yung mga bagay na tingin mo mahalaga, your values, should be the ones honing that or parang dictating that project or informing that project. Yun. So, para sa akin, ito yun, parang yung advocacy projects na, wala naman akong kinikita. Madalas, abonado pa ako, palabas pa yung pera lagi. Pero alam ko na, kailangan itong gawin at hindi ko ito magagawa in a traditional client or patron setup. So, I have to do it myself. So, yun. So, I try to balance those 3 types of projects para at least buhay ako at wala akong utang at nababayaran ko lahat. Yung ganong outlook sa work, ang laki ng implication nun sa life kasi hindi ko ginagawang kubaw ang Japan at Thailand at Singapore. Hindi ako biyahe ng biyahe, hindi ako nagkakape ng mahal masyado. Alam mo yun, parang I really try to live within my means and limited lang yung luho ko. Or pag may luho ako, I really get it at bargain prices or yung mga ganyan, as in second hand or whatever. Hindi ko naman hinahangad yung luxurious lifestyle. And I have to live with that.
Meron ka ba naging client or project na ideal na...
Ideal?
At yung pinakamalapit na nasagot yung mga gusto mo. Financially, ganyan, fairly compensated. Yung sa vision, mas nakaka-create ka, ganyan.
I can't say na meron kasi even if I had projects na well compensated na maayos, project lang siya. Wala siyang security of tenure. Parang ganun. I've had book projects that I really like na parang okay naman yung compensation at the time. Pero that's one project, After a few months or the next year, wala ka na ulit. Siguro yung isa kong may isip would have been a Vault magazine sa ABS-CBN Publishing because that was really an interesting magazine concept. It's a men's luxury magazine pero ang focus niya ay products. So yung mga cover namin, mga sapatos, mga relo, mga ganyan. Tapos, I was given the chance to design it from scratch. So, the whole design concept, I made it small and the whole look and feel, color, completo. As in, I was given a lot of creative control and the editor-in-chief was David Celdran and he really believed in my work. So, he championed the concept and napapasa, kumbaga, na-approve. It became a real magazine. And for me, that was really interesting kasi it's something that can live in the commercial world kasi there is a need for products being sold, part yan ng business. But sa akin, yung magazine na yon, dahil nga hindi siya yung mga faces and personalities, may insight ka into making, into materials, into techniques. into craftsmanship. So, that was very fulfilling to me na gumawa ng ganung klase ng work. And it could have been sustained, except hindi siya na-sustain nung... I mean, I guess the ABS-CBN was looking for a different type of magazine. I guess they wanted something more traditional. Kaya hindi rin sustain. But for me, if it was handled by a company who really saw the value of the concept, it could have been a really sustainable project.
Gano'ng katagal ka
I was there from 2011 to 2015.
4 years din. May maturity na rin sa paano kayo nag-work together doon.
Yeah. We really worked well as a team. Masaya talaga siya. Even if limited yung budget namin, it really looks way more polished and expensive than its actual means. So natuwa ako doon. And it had a very loyal readership. The people who really liked it. And until now, minsan, I would still see it in places kasi tiyatago talaga nila.
Di ba, ang tinapos mo is film?
Yeah, film and audiovisual communication.
Okay, film.
Ngayon, BA film na lang ang tawag sa kanya.
Okay. Like technical skills ba yung tinuro or?
The film program sa UP is the first film program in the country. At napakaganda ng program kasi napakalawak ng film, napakalawak ng cinema. And you can really kind of choose your focus as you go. Kunyari, if you really want to be a writer, you can focus on script writing and directing, ganon. If kung mas mahilig ka sa technical side, you can focus on sound or cinematography or even producing. If you're more into research or parang yung thesis mo can be a research output, pwede siyang sulat, hindi mo kailangan gumawa ng pelikula. So pwede siyang research of your own choosing. So I guess napaka-fortunate ko rin na nag-aral ako sa film kasi it really allowed me a lot of perspectives kasi kumbaga dahil nasa media context siya, ang daming theories and practices that I probably would not have encountered kung sa fine arts ako nag-aral. So it was really interesting to see yung fine arts world from my high school life and yung media world in my college life and to see how they all connected. Napakahalaga. So ako, ang mas interest ko talaga ay production design, directing, writing, and also parang experimental approaches to cinema. Kasi parang sa akin, napaka-broad ng cinema. Hindi lang siya yung pelikula as we know it. It could be ads, it could be anything visual, na, parang ganun. So I'm very interested in, kunyari, cinema for installation, cinema or experimental cinema, parang yung hindi mo ma-predict yung form, mga ganun. So yun yung inaral ko nung film, and my thesis was a short film about filmmaking. So meta-film siya.
Bakit yun ang napili mo dahil sa production design?
Nung pinipili ko ang gagawin ko sa college, I could have chosen fine arts. In fact, second choice ko yata yun. Pero I knew na yung curriculum namin sa Makiling, parang college na rin. So I would be repeating a lot of things. And syempre parang kung tamad ako, yes. I mean, I would ace these things na gawa ko na eh. Pero, I really wanted to learn. I wanted to challenge myself. And interesting sa akin yung film kasi may din ako magsulat. So, I think the marriage of visuals and writing would be cinema. Nakadagdag pa doon, I think when we were in second or third year, na-discover ko na may video cam yung school namin na pwede naming hiramin. So, every chance we got, yung klase namin would try to bargain with the teacher na imbis na magpa-long exam siya or final exam, film na lang yung output. At dahil art school naman kami, game naman yung maraming teacher. And in fairness, kakaiba rin siyang way of learning kasi you're learning by doing. Parang kunyari, pero hindi namin ginawa film, pero ginawa namin theater production na imbis na mag-long exam kami on Ramayana, we performed Ramayana. Parang gano'n.
Sino ka doon?
Wala, director. Charot, hindi. Parang ganun lang. Behind the scenes.
Yung puno.
Parang ganun. Or, kunwari yung mga Spanish era, mga ganyan. Or, pag ganun, Spanish era, colonial era. Siyempre, laging ako yung foreigner.
Oo nga.
Laging ako yung foreigner. Wala akong choice. Kahit hindi ayoko, parang
Mestizo.
konti lang kami sa class. Yun, mga ganun. So, fun siya na gawin. So, I realized I wanted to do more of this. Nag-film ako.
Interesting yung film sa akin kasi masaya silang gawin lahat.
Mm-hmm.
Pero nandun ako lagi sa ano ba yung mabilis gawin. So,
Hindi siya mabilis gawin.
di ba? So parang kaya interesting din.
Pwede siya maging mabilis gawin. May certain approaches na mabilis gawin.
Pero parang in your case, na-enjoy mo talaga yung every aspect of filmmaking.
Isa rin yun kasi sa things that I learned na research sa university. We usually think of research as parang science, parang gano'n, na may hypothesis, tatest mo sa lab, gawin mo. Pero yung research sa humanities, medyo mahirap pa siyang magagap for many people. Pero sa akin kasi, parang na-realize ko to siguro years back na for an artist to succeed, kailangan kaya mo rin ipaliwanag yung work mo. You can write about it, you can explain it. Tapos naisip ko, ang hirap naman nun kasi parang only the extroverts or artists who have writing inclination will make it. Hindi ba eloquent enough na yung artwork itself? Bakit kailangan ko pa magsulat about it? Bakit yung mga researchers ba in the social sciences or science parang pinag-layout ko ba sila ng libro? Di ba? Hindi naman eh. So, bakit sa humanities, kailangan mo pang i-justify yung work mo through a different medium when yung medium mo na itself should be appreciated for what it is. So, I learned na yung ginagawa mo, yun na yun. That is the research. So sa akin parang I discover how materials interact, how the work interacts in a context. Parang kumbaga may findings talaga dahil sa ginagawa mo. Pero dati, hindi ko siya na-frame as research simply because I didn't really see it as research because my understanding of research was limited. Pero ngayon na mas malawak na yung understanding ko, ngayon nakikita ko na research pala talaga siya. So, even if yung mga bagay na matagal gawin, like pelikula or monumental sculpture or something, or a very tedious technique like kunwari weaving for me, I learned a lot from it. Research pala talaga siya. Hirap lang siya intindihin ng world as research or as findings or parang feeling nila we have this feeling kasi ng art is just, aesthetics, it's a style, it's how it looks, it's how cute it is, di ba? Or ano ba, parang may naalala ka ba sa kanyang memories, mga ganyan. But it can be so many things. And I think kaya rin mas interested ako sa things that kind of blur boundaries or expectations kasi doon ako nagkakaroon ng bagong findings eh. Like kunyari in terms of viewfind, one of the most interesting things, initial parang findings ko, was yung governance of an artwork. Which parang dito kasi it's funded by a grant. It's public in nature, I guess. Or public yung context niya. Pero hindi naman public yung governance niya kasi ako lang yung nag-govern sa kanya at yung OICA at yung UP admin. So yung maintenance niya, people can throw trash and do whatever. And kami yung maglilinis. Kami yung nag-govern. Doon ko na-realize na pwede pala maging public yung work and yet not public yung governance niya. Coming from my activist experience, kung democratized din yung governance nito na if I collaborated with certain organizations or departments or whatever, then we can share the duty of maintaining it and looking after it and managing it. Mag-iiba yung work itself. Mag-iiba yung cleanliness niya, mag-iiba yung maintenance niya, maybe mag-iiba pa yung certain aspects niya. So, hindi ko yun ma-discover kung sa gallery ko lang siya ginawa. Kasi normally, the governance of a work in a gallery or museum is very clear. It's the artist, it's the museum, that's it. Even if it's open to the public, you're not allowed to touch it, you're not allowed to engage with it. Or even if it's public installation para museum, alam mong nasa museum ka eh. Pero ito kasi, wala siya doon. So, people can literally sleep in it. And that's valid. Kumbaga, sa museum, even if pwede ka matulog doon, at the end of the day, magkasara yung museum, aalis ka. Dito, nandiyan ka lang. Pwede ka talaga mag-overnight. And I know at least one person has done that. Na-observe ko myself. So, sa akin, findings yun. I mean, do I have to translate it pa into a journal article? Parang, grabe naman. I mean, I could. Pero parang sa akin, may findings na siya. May natutunan na ako. Meron nang na-reveal yung whole process of art making in that regard. So, sa akin, I wouldn't have learned that if we didn't do this. And until now, syempre hanggang June yung estimated niya na. And continuous pa rin yung learning namin from this whole installation.
Parang you're saying, yung sa research discipline mo, na researcher discipline mo na, parang dun mo kasi siya naiipon or na, so dami ng ginagawa mo. It could have been open-ended lahat, tas parang walang natatapos. Pero based nga sa mga projects mo, buo siya eh. Buo siya parang at this point buo siya.
Yeah,
Not
like kunyari
unless
here, parang
meron kang matutunan
meron na akong
pa.
initial learnings na if I do a next iteration of it,
Yeah.
it would be informed by those learnings already. May iterative function na siya. And siguro ano rin kasi, parang I feel very privileged actually that I can look at art this way. Kasi if I didn't do this, if I didn't make the choices that I did, I would still be looking at art as something na ina-exhibit, something na binibenta, something na kailangan ko ng patron collector to do. And yun lang, kumbaga aesthetic experience lang siya and object creation. Largely, the art world is still defined in those terms. Maganda ba siya or hindi? Bibiling ko ba siya or hindi? Bagay ba siya sa sofa ko, sa bahay ko? But not many artists get to look at other facets of art making because they are tied by certain situations and relationships. Yes, I feel very privileged. So, yun. So, kahit hindi nga ako yumaman, ang dami ko namang nakuha. Ngayon, yung tanong ba kung sapat ba siya or hindi? That's a next question that I will have to struggle with.
Safe ka na ba sa future?
Oo, yun. Siguro natutunan ko rin ngayon sa activism na we're always looking for stability and security. Pero if we really think about it, who is secure and stable really? I mean, even if you work so hard na magpundar, a natural disaster can take everything away. Or, kunyari, in nga, with the case na sinabi ko kanina, even if 10 years ka nang may green card at citizen ka na, pwede ka palang i-deport. Everything is really an illusion. Kahit yung bumili ka ng insurance, hindi mo naman alam talaga kung makukuha mo yun, di ba? Pag nagkasakit ka na, di ba, yung PhilHealth nga, di ba, yung judge, 5% lang yung kinover sa kanyang operation. Parang every month, iisipin mo magkano yung binabayad mo sa mga PhilHealth at mga SSS for the illusion of a safety net. But really, where is the safety net? So sa akin, na-realize ko na, pwede naman ako maghabol ng mga markers of stability like bahay, kotse, paycheck, insurance, ganyan, pag-aari, investments. Pero wala naman talagang na-assure itong mga bagay na to. So maybe I should just live with the knowledge na insecurity and precarity is part of life. Alam ko rin naman na nasasabi ko dahil wala akong anak at pamilyang binubuhay. Pero choice ko rin naman yun na wag munang magpamilya at mag-anak. Kasi ang dami-dami na namang kailangang kalingahin sa mundo.
Dun sa, nabanggit mo na, yun sa art world, di ba? Like, aesthetics, magkano ba ito? Or kung bibilhin mo to, magiging patron ka kasi alam mo, pag binenta mo to, mas malaki, ganyan.
Yeah.
Or, yung mga nagsasabing 6 to 8 digit, ganyan, income, ganon. Yeah. Ako, syempre, as husay and di ba? Ako talaga I believe na maging secure yung artist from the back end, ganyan. At least sana may namang problema doon, ganyan. Pero siguro sa creative industries, ganyan, and ngayon yung dumadami ang nakatingin doon, lalo sa Philippine creative economy, ganyan, anong mga batas, paano ba yung mga programa. So, ikaw as an educator, siguro, or researcher din, and community enabler din.
Okay.
Ano yung sa tingin mo na dapat pang tignan, dapat pang buuin?
Marami pa malayo pa pero siguro ang masasabi ko, yung maghuhulma talaga ng kultura sa isang bansa ay yung taong bayan. At yung taong bayan, supposedly, ay nire-represent ng gobyerno. So, trabaho ng gobyerno na maging boses ng taong bayan at pahalagahan at pangalagaan yung dapat pinapangalagaan ng taong bayan. So, therefore, I think it's really the state's big responsibility to create these spaces and ensure that culture is understood and supported very deeply. Kasi yung role talaga ng culture in our lives, napakahalaga, napakalalim. Ako, I'm very cautious and suspicious sa recent developments sa creative industry. Kasi we have to understand that what is being celebrated with these bills is not really creativity per se, but the economics of creativity. In fact, yung concept ng creativity is being treated as a form of capital. Meaning, when we say a form of capital, it's something that can be monetized. When we look at a product like gold, for example, or sugar, limited siya. Yung gold, kung ano lang yung mamina mo sa isang lugar, yun na yun. Yung asukal, kung ano lang yung harvest nyo in a season, yun na yun. Pero ang framing kasi sa creativity, it's an endless, boundless resource. It's seen as a raw material, a resource na pwedeng pagkaperahan. At ang sinasabi sa mga frameworks ng UN and otherwise na pwede maging competitive edge ng third world countries or developing countries. So they don't use the third world anymore. Developing countries. Kasi kahit wala kang ginto sa isla mo, kahit wala kang asukal or puno, meron kang creativity. Therefore, meron kayong pwedeng pagkaperahan. So, ang framing talaga sa kanya ay something that can be looped into the system of capital. Something na pwedeng pagkakitaan. That's not all that bad sa konteksto ng kailangan natin ng kabuhayan. Yes, kailangan natin ng kabuhayan. Pero, hindi mo pwedeng ilimit yung creativity to those terms alone. And this shows in the priority areas ng creative economy na, syempre, yung mga advertising, animation, game design, things that can be easily capitalized on. At syempre, mahuhuli dyan yung mga cultural communities, heritage, unless it's in the context of tourism. Yun. Pero essentially, kung hindi mo siya ma-convert to cash, hindi siya mahalaga. So sa akin, we have to be very suspicious about this kasi syempre, when we're celebrating legislation like this, we think na finally mapoprotektahan ng creatives, masusuportahan ng creativity. No, we're just supporting it from an economic point of view. And that, like the choices I made, changes our relationship with creativity. Na we will work in creativity if it makes money, if it can be exported, pero kung hindi, it will be cast aside. Tapos, hindi rin natin sure, because it's treated as capital, ang priority mo ay how the product moves. Hindi mo priority yung how is it produced, ethical ba yung context na pag-produce sa kanya, nakabubuhay ba yung sahod ng mga gumagawa sa kanya, meron bang safety net, social safety nets, yung mga taong gumagawa sa kanya. Yung marangal ba yung may dignified ba yung kalagayan ng mga tao. And as a creative, we know na hindi. I mean, people have no insurance, no monthly sweldo. This was very evident nung pandemic na, with a major event like a pandemic, na-expose talaga yung vulnerability ng creative sector na walang performances, walang exhibitions. Sobrang naghirap talaga it was a very difficult time for creatives. And, a pandemic is extreme, but that's the norm for many people. Yun. So, I'm not sure if the legislation will address that. Or if that is even the priority to be addressed. Baka exporting lang yung priority, but not the welfare of the creative community. We have to really read between the lines and look at how creativity is talked about and in what context siya-celebrate. Kasi ma-reveal yun yung kung saang sistema siya nakapaloob.
Sabi nga, parang sino ang nakikinabang?
Yeah, sino ang nakikinabang doon? Hopefully, ang creatives. Hopefully. I'm still optimistic, pero alam ko naman na given that framing, the likelihood is not very likely.
Hood lang. Silver lining, like meron
talaga. May makikinabang dyan. Merong certain areas, certain disciplines, certain people who will benefit from it. If they are the majority, I don't know. Definitely may magbe-benefit. But I hope nga na dahil nga it's a matter of the state and it's a legislation, na hopefully may necessary push and pull yan in how it will be implemented. And and ang ganda rin naman ng legislation ay pwede siyang i-amend, pwede siyang i-adjust. New bills can also be made to remedy yung mga gaps in previous legislature. So, trabaho lang na talaga ng taong bayan na maging napagmatsyag at assertive.
Yeah, dapat talaga siya pag-usapan.
Yes.
Kasi walang i-amend kung hindi pinag-uusapan.
Walang i-amend kung walang magpa-file. Kailangan may mag-file.
Parang okay lang pala.
Yeah. Ganun, di ba? So, yun nga, kung okay tayong ibenta lang yung mga karapatan natin, then mabibenta yung karapatan natin. Pero kung hindi.
Yung sa experience mo sa pagtuturo, ano yung from, kailangan nag-start turo?
I started teaching, I think 2018 or 2017. I was actually invited earlier than that. Kasi parang wala naman actually sa plano ko yung pagtuturo. And until now, I'm still yet to pursue my MA na plano ko rin naman in the near future. Pero naimbitahan ako because I was a practitioner and it's desirable for some schools na practitioner yung actual practitioner with industry experience yung kunin na lecturer. So yun. So at first ay hindi ko siya kayang tugunan kasi geographically hindi ko mamamanage yung Rizal, Makati, Quezon City yung mga ginagalawan ko at traffic. Mamamatay ako unless lumilipad ako. Hindi yun mangyayari. So when I decided to move to Quezon City, yun, naging possible na siya.
Kasi sa ngayon, di ba yung mga art subjects, mga art-based subjects, para sinasabi kailangan na rin matuto ng entrepreneurship, ganyan. So parang, nasaan ka doon?
Okay. Actually, kaya ko rin naman in-entertain talaga yung thought of teaching kasi the program at the Ateneo was information design. Na sa akin, this is a very different fine arts course or parang department compared to yung mas familiar ko sa UP. For context, yung UP is the first fine arts program in the country. So, nung in-establish yung UP in 1908, may fine arts program na. So, napakahaba ng kasaysayan niya and painting talaga yung painting and sculpture, the traditional art yung basehan. Sa Ateneo, it's a much younger program. It's celebrating its 25th year, I think, next year or this year. So, design talaga yung leanings niya. So, the courses at the Ateneo Fine Arts program are information design, theater arts, creative writing, and art management. So, kumbaga, very modern yung conception niya. And that was very attractive to me kasi syempre book design yung focus ko at the time. So, they had classes on publication design that really, kumbaga, tickles things that I'm interested in na meron kaming class na printing and publishing techniques that really just talk about like paano ka mag-bind, paano ka mag-print, paano mo prepare yung files. Nerdy things na before in college we would just cover generally but you just learn on your own. So na-attract ako doon. And during the years that I was there, I saw na may class on typography. And then we developed a class na advanced typography where people can learn how to design a typeface. So, yun. So, I was very interested in that, na parang a design-centered program.
Para sa ating audience, no? Para
yes.
maano sila, like, sino ba tong Karl na to? Ano yung, pwede mo banggit, ano yung mga mainstream na mga trabaho?
Okay. Mainstream na works ko. Ako, marami rin naman. Okay. Siguro sa pelikula, I guess the most mainstream things, the projects that I've been involved in are films ng schoolmate ko, si Antoinette Hadaone. I did the script. I was script consultant and poster designer for projects like Fangirl, That Thing Called Tadhana, and Alone Together. I also did the poster for Norte, Hangganan ng Kasaysayan ni Lav Diaz. And then sa books, I designed books by Ricky Lee because I was a script writing workshopper under Ricky Lee several times. So many of his books ako yung nag-design. Okay, another mainstream thing that I do is I help run an account on Instagram and Facebook called Brutalist Pilipinas. So it's a very popular account that focuses on promoting brutalist architecture in the Philippines in general, but also architectural heritage or built heritage in general. Yung interest ko nun was Leandro Locsin, national artist for architecture, is probably our most famous Filipino architect. And most of his works are considered masterpieces of brutalist architecture in the Philippines. Brutalism is an architectural approach that uses building materials as they are. So, kunyari, kung konkreto siya or glass, yun na siya. Hindi na siya pinipintahan, hindi na siya nilalagyan decorations, yun na siya. Yung form niya is also very graphic because usually kung ano yung function niya, yun na yun yung form niya. So, hindi siya tinatago under false walls or whatever. Kung ano yung function niya, yun yung form niya. It dictates the form. And usually, it's a very memorable or graphic form na maalala mo. Kaya rin, I think in the social media age, it has a following or it's quite polarizing kasi it's very graphic nga. So, it's very photogenic. It's very striking. So, many people either really love it or really hate it. But for me, aside from those qualities, I also find it very interesting kasi yung brutalism emerged after the World War. It's very linked to ideas of rebuilding the world after the war. Normally, di ba yung architecture before, it was palaces and castles and churches, and they were very monumental but also very decorative. May mga columns, may mga kung ano-anong ornaments. The turn to modernism after the war, naging way talaga siya to rebuild kasi the brutalist style na undecorated, unpainted, really lent itself well to the economics of rebuilding na hindi siya masyadong mahal i-produce. You can create very striking and functional buildings without spending as much as you would have built a palace before. So interested ako doon na parang mayroon siyang democratic aspirations. A lot of newly independent nations built modernist and brutalist structures to signify a shift in government or direction, and democratic aspirations also. A lot of the communist bloc architecture was also like that kasi ibang-iba yung pagtingin niya na parang mass housing, mga large-scale socio-civic projects yung ginagawa. At the same time, sa Philippines, very interesting yun sa akin kasi that was the time of martial law na lumabas. So, very linked siya to authoritarian rule also na the Marcoses were major sponsors of large edifices like hospitals and cultural centers and all these big buildings na in that straddling democracy and authoritarianism, na-fascinate ako dun sa politics of that architectural style. So, going back to Locsin, so one of his major works for me was yung Philippine Pavilion sa Expo 1970 sa Osaka. It was built in 1970, so it was just a year after the Cultural Center of the Philippines was completed. And one thing that is really interesting for me as a student of media, ang pagtingin ko sa CCP complex in general ay isa siyang para siyang film set kasi it was designed to be televised, to be mediated, to project, to transmit images of a new, prosperous, modern Philippines to the world, and in a way to transmit the idea of a prosperous new society under Marcos. Para sa akin, extension nun yung 1970 pavilion. Kasi yun din yung function niya sa Expo. To be seen, to be photographed, to experience the Philippines in a short while. I went to Osaka to try to learn more about how the Philippines presented itself, how the Philippines was projected, ano yung naging concerns. Kasi parang merong repetition in the cycle na the first ever World Exposition in Asia was held in Osaka in 1970. And it's very rare for it to happen again in a city, but it's happening for the second time in 2025. And Marcos Sr. yung president at the time, Marcos Jr. yung president ngayon. In fact, Bongbong was at Expo 1970 accompanying his mother, who was representing the Philippines at the time. So very interesting yun for me, na ano yung magiging projection ng Philippines again, this time around in the same city. And what I was trying to understand then was what lessons can we learn from the 1970 Expo so that we can try to understand or decode or appreciate the 2025 Expo. So, hindi siya masyadong mainstream kasi nasa Osaka siya eh. Pero I really want to go there. Pero again, going back to my...
Pero ano siya, kumakalat, nag-share siya sa social media.
Yeah. Yun. So, interesting yung ngayon. But I wish I had the means to go. Pero wala pa. Hopefully, may ilang buwan pa naman to see if magmamaterialize.
Yeah. And with that, as an artist and designer and maraming nakatrabaho na iba't ibang projects talaga. Iba't ibang tipo ng client. And at parang iba't ibang motivation din.
Yes.
Diba? Pera ba to? For art? Ganyan. Matapos lang. Tsaka nakaka-travel din, whether across the Philippines or outside. Ano yung nakikita mo tungkol or sa mga Filipino creatives and sa mga tao ring or sa mga nag-hire sa mga creatives, the ecosystem.
Okay.
Kasama na rin sa mga naguhulma ng mga kung saan mapupunta itong creative industries. At saka, yun, tsaka yung mga naka-appreciate ng lahat ng ginagalawan ng creative.
Oh. Ako, siguro dalawa yung pangahawakan ko. Yung isa ay napaka-rich talaga ng Pilipinas sa talent. As in, napakahusay, napakasipag ng mga Filipinos, napaka-inventive natin. Not to say that other people from other countries are not, pero undeniable na we are very good at what we do, and we can be very good at what we choose to do. Undeniable yun sa akin. I don't think every country can brag to have that kind of rich of a talent pool, but we have a very rich and expansive talent pool. However, we're also held back by governance. We really need to develop systems which will let that potential bloom. Right now, there's much work to be done. So, kunyari sa education, sa early part pa lang ng education, dapat na-introduce na yung cultural concepts, artistic concepts. Dapat na-introduce yung students sa kontekstong ginagalawan nila. Hindi lang yung parang memorize ka ng national facts, kundi really see and observe what's around you, and also employ creative techniques to learning na kumbaga, hindi ka lang magtuturo ng drawing dahil mag-drawing tayo ng apple, kundi sa pagdodrawing, ano ba yung matututunan ng estudyante? We can develop different types of intelligences by incorporating more creative work or creative techniques in studying. But also, I think one of the biggest gaps that we have is the idea of cultural spaces. Siguro kaya ko rin ginawa yung installation na to kasi ang de facto cultural space natin ay mall or internet or Facebook, social media. Kasi doon tayo may makakagalaw ng relatively ease at kalayaan. Pero we really need spaces where people can gather, where people can organize, where people can determine their choices, their actions, where people can shape how their industry should be, how their art practices should be. We really need those spaces, and right now, really don't have enough of them. So that's something that individuals, private sector, and the government can really work together to develop. At hindi lang cultural space na masabi lang na may exhibition space. Like real working cultural spaces na meron talagang integridad at insight sa cultural process. Yun, kailangan talaga ng ganun. So we really need new people, new types of creatives to emerge, people who can be creative managers, people who can navigate culture and the dynamics of it. Kailangan talaga natin ng cultural spaces. We also need more opportunities for people to see the impact of art and creativity in their lives. Kumbaga, hindi lang siya dahil kabuhayan siya, dahil pagkaperahan siya, kundi dahil meron siyang intangible benefit sa buhay natin. Meron siyang sacrosanct part ng identity natin as Filipinos, as people, as members of our different communities. Na yun, dapat pangalagaan din yun. Na hindi lang siya ma-reduce to an economic venture, kundi it has to be something cultural. And therefore, we need spaces that will allow people to reflect and appreciate that kind of understanding or appreciation of culture. So spaces like this na multifunctional, that are thought-provoking, that are open to people, yun, kailangan natin yun. And I think if we had more of these types of spaces that are attuned to our environment, that are attuned to the way we consume, to our modes of consumption, mindful to our concerns, our basic human rights, concepts of justice and other important values. I think Philippines will be in a much better position to be proud of its creative scene. So challenge yun sa lahat na mag-ambag towards that goal. Legislators can pass laws and funding to those projects that do that. Creatives can organize and define agendas that they know will answer to the broadest spectrum of needs, including the intangible and non-economic ones. Yung mga supporters and consumers can be more, supportive and to be more discriminating, more intelligent with their choices, more informed about their choices also. And artists can also be more free and more daring in the types of projects and commitments that they can dare to aspire for. I really have high hopes for the Philippine creative scene, pero napakalaking task siya ahead and you really need everyone's help. I hope mangyari siya.
In this lifetime.
In this lifetime, I hope. Umuusad naman siya, pero parang maikli lang ang life. Sana bumilis ang usad niya.
Nasa quarter, tapos na ang quarter life natin.
Correct. Oo
May
nga.
pa-midlife na.
Tsaka, people are being born every day. Ano bang klaseng mundo ang iwan natin? Sana hindi naman yung tsakang mundo. Yun. Sana yung time na may oras talaga yung mga taong mag-museum, magpinta, mag-listen to music. Sana
At yung hindi na
a
siya,
world where people can afford to buy books and read them.
hindi na siya luxury.
Hindi na siya luxury. Yes. Hindi siya luho.
Yeah. Thank you, Carl. And
Thank you rin.
yung iba, chat-chat na lang.
Oo nga. Kung kailangan din ng take 2, pwede naman isa pa.
Wow. Ang dami, ang dami. And thank you for guiding us sa husay at sa nagmamahusay. So,
Happy to serve.
happy to
Happy to serve.
serve.
And ano naman, I really believe in husay and I really want to support in any way I can.
Salamat sa pakikipagmahusay today! This episode is powered by Husay.co, helping artists grow their careers and providing creative solutions for brands. Catch the full episodes of Nagmamahusay on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, like, and share.